Year 5, it's Miss Bella here, and I'm just going to use this video to talk you through our Poetry Innovate Week, or actually we should probably call it an Innovent Week, shouldn't we? So last week, the work you guys did on Where Did All the Dragons Go by Faye Robinson was really, really good, particularly your vocabulary banks. You came up with some really fantastic vocabulary choices for that, so well done everyone. So the first things we're going to do to kick off this week is we are just going to have a little look at our grid for poetry. Now, we all know that we should be aiming for the blue, the greens and the yellows on this grid. So let's have a little look of what we need to include in our poetry to make sure that we achieve everything we need to achieve. So in structural features, we need to be able to write free verse and experimenting with simple forms, i.e. stanzas. And actually, lots of you showed that you could do that last week when you were imitating the poem, because I got lots of examples that were sent to me written in stanzas. I didn't get any that were just written right across the page or in big long chunks. So if you guys can keep the same level of structure up this week, then you're going to be in a good place. Moving on to green for the structural features there, links between stanzas that help develop a theme. So line breaks chosen to create an impact with their form. I actually have a couple of examples that we're going to look at later that show exactly that, how a smart line break can make or break a particular stanza. And the last one for the structural features is explain and justify poem structures and how these influence their meaning. Again, when we look at the two examples I've got later on, we will look at how we can explain and justify the things for poetry. So language features, we need to have similes and expressive language for imagery. Perfect. So sound effects and atmosphere. We know all about that. Mapos, onomatopoeia. This is your chance to fit it in. Moving on to the green for the language features, we need to use surprising language. Well, all of your work last week showed that you can choose very surprising language, and you kept it all relevant as well. So that's another thing we need to keep up this week. Make sure any words that we're choosing are relevant to the topic that we've chosen to write about. And then the yellow, we have explained the impact of figurative and expressive language. So once you've written your stanza and you've included your mapos and you've included your onomatopoeia, that's when you need to be able to sit down and say, well, I included that example of onomatopoeia because of this. And you can give your beautiful, succinct reasons. Handwriting, you guys know, you should use it as a chance to practice your handwriting. Let's go for those greens and those yellows on that one, shall we? Grammar. Our grammar needs to be mostly appropriate. We're not going to include much dialogue perhaps in our poetry, but we'll have a look and see what our two examples have got waiting for us. The punctuation is an interesting one for this actually, because this poem, if you remember from last week when we read Faye Robinson's original version of Where Did the Dragons Go, she includes things like semicolons and hyphens for emphasis and effect. So that's going to be your challenge this week as well in your invented poem, is to try and include those semicolons and those hyphens. And then spelling, you guys, you can take your time with this. Make sure that your words are spelt correctly. Check the dictionary. Remember, you can get dictionaries online. You don't have to guess. They're there to help you. So we need to create a checklist for our poem, don't we? To make sure that we include everything we need to. As always, you can see at the top, I have said here, remember to refer back to our grid. Da-da! I'm going to have to put up a document with this in, I think, so you can refer back to it whenever you want. So, remember to refer back. Oh, look. I think the first thing on our checklist should definitely be that varied punctuation there. I've even got the hyphen, I've got the semicolon. You can include colons in that if you would like to. Powerful and relevant vocabulary. So the relevant here is the one I really want to stress. In your innovative poems, you're going to be able to choose any animal you would like to base it on, but you've got to make sure your vocabulary matches. So if you've chosen a lion, oh, your lion can't be swimming around the savannah or things like that. So you've got to make sure that it's linked to your ideas. So then we have our evidence of Mapos underneath it. Mapos is something that you guys have got really, really good at over the last year or so. You really need to keep that up because it's such a fantastic literary device. Let's just quickly unpack Mapos. I know it won't be the first time and it won't be the last, but we have our metaphors, our alliteration, our personification, which is a good one for poetry. Remember, personification is when you give something inanimate lifelike qualities. So you say, the sea was a growling dog. We've then got our onomatopoeia for the O, on-o-mat-o. Poem without the M-I-A, and then of course the S at the end, which I've run out of space for, is similes, which is where we would be using like or as, but you knew that of course, didn't you? So use of other figurative devices. This one will become clearer when we look at our examples, which we're just about to do, and accurate structure for the genre, which we've already talked about. Is it paragraphs? Nope, it's not paragraphs. What is it? It's stanzas. We want poetry. So let's have a look. Without further ado, here are two examples I have that have been written by two different Year 5 teachers. The only clue I'm going to give you is that I am not one of them. So I will read each of these to you. So the first one. But children rarely learn to see that spiders played like you and me. They would not join the spider lads, eating flies and scaring dads. Something creeping, dangling low. Spiders are our friends, not foe. So that was our first wonderful innovative verse there by one of our teachers. The second verse goes like this. But mermaids always understood that dolphins in their heads were wise. They loved to see the dolphins' glee, leaping, splashing in the sea. Magical, mystical, spreading pleasure, gliding over reefs and treasure. Many are grey, many are sleek, but some are impetuous, some are meek. Friendly dolphins, young and old, keepers of secrets, also I'm told. Meeting often in dolphin schools, squeaking, clicking, breaking rules. So that's your first challenge of this poem. Can you look at these two invented verses written by two different poets? And can you guess which of our teachers are the secret poets here? You can put your answers on Dojo, you can put your answers on Twitter. The only clue is I am not one of them. You've got 4 other teachers to choose from there. So let's have a look at what these two wonderful poets did to invent their verses. And of course, we are going to use our checklist to have a look, to break it down for ourselves, because, taking things step by step is the best way of doing it. Right, so let's start off with this one. So the layout I've chosen here is in the black ink. Here we have the original poem, which by Faye Robinson, and in the red here we have the innovated verse that was written by one of our fabulous teachers. And we're just going to quickly go through and we're going to see if they have ticked things off on our checklist. So the first thing we're going to look at is we are going to look at varied punctuation. Now I've put a little blue circle there because I'm going to go through and just quickly have a look at the red writing, because that's the innovated verse, and I'm going to see if they have included their varied punctuation. So I can see I have a comma here, I've got a wonderful semicolon here, I've got a hyphen here, eating flies and scaring dads, something creeping down below, and I've got another semicolon here. So already I know that the person who wrote this innovated verse can give themselves at least 1 tick against that. Whether they've used their semicolons and their hyphens accurately is another thing that you guys are going to have to check. We have worked on colons and semicolons and hyphens, so think back to that. If you find a semicolon too tricky to use, that's fine. Do a bit of research into it, but we should all definitely be able to aim for those hyphens. And then the last piece, we've got some other lovely punctuation here. We've got the exclamation mark at the start. We've got the commas, and she's made sure that she's got her capital letters in accurate places. So definitely a tick for that one. The next one we'll look at then, we'll change our pen to purple and we'll look if they have powerful and relevant vocabulary. So first I need to check what animal they were writing their innovated verse about, so I know if it's relevant. So they chose, spiders. Lovely. So now I need to make sure that all the vocab they've used is relevant to spiders. For example, I wouldn't expect to see something about a spider driving down. Spiders are animals, not a car. They wouldn't be driving anywhere. So let's have a look at their vocabulary. So we've got dangling low, which is quite nice. They haven't just said hanging, they've gone for dangling. Foe is a brilliant one. If you're not sure what foe means, so spiders are our friends, not foe. Foe is a synonym for enemy. So I think this is shown a perfect example of how you can use vocabulary to, get that deeper meaning in there. So they're friends, not foe. And also, on a tangent, I know we're talking about vocabulary, but I've just seen F and F. So they've got some lovely alliteration in there too, which is fabulous. So not only have they got the fab vocab, but they've got the alliteration running through it. Creeping is another nice strong one. Spider, lads and dads. I think the fact that we've used lads because it works with the rhyming scheme that this particular author used, I think is fab. But children rarely learned. This author hasn't just said, they never learn to see. It's rarely learned. So I think they definitely deserve a tick there as well. I personally think for this person there's a bit of room for improvement for their vocabulary, but it's an excellent start. Let's change our colours again then. Let's have a look at some mapos. Let's go for green for mapos. So that's the metaphors, the alliteration, the personification, the onomatopoeia and the similes. Well, already we know that they had some alliteration here with friends and foe. Let's have a look for, they haven't got any metaphors, so they need to work on that. That's something they would have to add in. Let's have a look for some personification. They have definitely, I think, spider lads, that's a nice bit of personification there. They could have maybe added a bit more description, but it's a good start. We'll be kind, we'll give it to them. Onomatopoeia. No example of onomatopoeia in this particular event, so that's something else they could add in. What onomatopoeia would you use when you were talking about a spider? And the last one, similes. No similes here. Another one. So I wouldn't give this person a tick yet on their checklist. I'd ask them to see if they could go back and add in a metaphor or simile. Get those figurative devices in. And actually, when we come to our use of other figurative devices, at the moment, this is a very short verse, to be fair. So I'd say it's missing some of those key things as well. That's something else that could go back and be looked at. This is a very short verse, like I said, but no one's ever perfect first time view. An accurate structure for the genre. Yes, I definitely think they can do that. The structure here is a bit strange, but that's only because I have interspersed it with lines from the original poem. As you can see, I'm just putting little dots here next to the original ones. So if I took those out and put it back into its stanza, they've definitely got the accurate structure. So that is poet number 1. Wonder who you think it is. Let's move on to poet number 2. How did they do with their checklist? So we've got a few ticks here, a few things we found missing. Let's find out if that changes for this next poet. So I've done the same thing. I've got the original poem in black and I've got the invented in red, just to make that clear for you guys. So, but mermaids always understood that dolphins in their heads were wise. Okay, so let's go back to that. Let's get our punctuation coloured pen. Let's see what varied punctuation we've got here. We have accurate use of capital letters. We've got a comma. Lovely semicolon in there. Another comma at the end. Leaping, splashing in the sea. Excellent. magical, mystical. I like what they've done here. Commas in a list. They've used more than one adjective there, so they've separated them. Spreading pleasure, gliding over reefs and treasure. Many a grey, many a sleek, but some are impetuous, some are meek. As you can see, I'm not circling every comma this person's used, but I think they've done a pretty good job with their punctuation. I would say perhaps they need to try and work on including a hyphen. So I've maybe just put next step hyphen just to remind myself that that's what they need to work on. Let us see. Oh, I just made a little line there. Let me just rub that out. Excellent. Now let's change our colours back to the one that we were using for the powerful and relevant vocabulary, which you guys all knew was going to be purple. Everything vocabulary based would be purple if I had my say. That's why, let's have a look. So, mermaids always understood that dolphins in their heads were wise. Glee, definitely. Nice strong piece there. Leaping, so they haven't just gone for jumping. Leaping is also very good because it's a relevant vocabulary for dolphins. Have you ever seen the videos of them leaping from the sea with their powerful tails? So not only is it powerful, it's relevant too. Well done to this mystery author. And we've also got magical, mystical, which are lovely words. Spreading pleasure, gliding over reefs, not just swimming, gliding. Many are sleek. Some are impetuous and some are meek. Impetuous and meek could be seen as antonyms of each other. Meek is sort of shy. So they've got some extra things going on in there. Friendly dolphins, young as old, keep its secrets, or so I'm told. Meeting often in dolphin schools. Squeaking and clicking. That's another example of that relevant vocabulary. And I know it's relevant because those are the noises that dolphins make. So I'd suggest that when you move on to tomorrow's lesson on Tuesday, when you're drawing your animal, and you're thinking of vocabulary that you want to include about that animal, make sure you know about their behaviour, how they act, because that's how you get that relevant vocabulary in here. Okay, let's get our Mapos pen out then. What Mapos have we got in here? Have we got any metaphors going in here? I think we could say that perhaps keeper of secrets. You know, they don't literally keep our secrets, but it's that beautiful sort of imaginative, figurative language going on there. Alliteration, yes, we do. We have some here in magical and mystical. Personification, yep, I think we've got a bit of that. Especially, there's a clever bit of wordplay here that kind of lends itself to personification. So, meeting often in dolphin schools. So, dolphins are known as particularly intelligent, so you might think they go to a school. A group of dolphins is a pod, but the little bit of wordplay that goes on there is sort of groups of fish are said to go in a school of fish. So that's another just piece of nice relevant vocabulary, links with marine animals. Onomatopoeia, we have squeaking and clicking, relevant pieces of onomatopoeia. That's what dolphins get up to: squeak, click, have fun, clap their fins. Similes. Do we have some similes? We do not have a simile in this particular one. Maybe that's something that Year 5 can really show off in their poetry. Strong use of similes. Use of other figurative devices. Yes, well, it's just the wonderful sort of picture that this whole thing paints. This whole invented verse paints here. So I really like the many a grey, many a sleek. That sort of gives you a look into their personality traits and things like that. So an accurate structure. Yes, this person has definitely given me an accurate structure for their poem. The one thing I would like to point out when it comes to structure is in our grid there was something here, particularly where it says links between stanzas. I'm even circling it. I'm circling it in blue. I pretend that's green. Links between stanzas to develop a theme. So let's go back here. This in-event author has definitely done that. They've linked their stanzas together and it's here. They love to see the dolphins' glee, leaping, splashing in the sea. Magical, mystical, spreading pleasure, gliding over reefs and treasure. So they've linked the idea that these are wonderful animals having fun in the sea. There's going to be things like reefs, and treasure is like a nice little You know, you swim in the sea, come across buried treasure, sunken ships. So they've linked their ideas across. And then they've gone back to it at the end, sort of, when they've said that dolphins in their heads were wise. They've linked back to that again at the end when they mentioned about dolphin schools and things like that. And we mentioned that was a little bit of nice wordplay as well. So what you guys now need to do is... we've gone through these two particular orders. We've had a look at the checklists. Now, compare these two checklists, and I'd like you to see if you can create your own checklists about these two poems. Did I miss anything? Would you add anything? And then I'd like you to compare and contrast them. So we already said that this author perhaps needs to include maybe a metaphor or a simile, and we said this author needs a simile. So definitely have a look, compare and contrast. What do they need? You could maybe create a Venn diagram of the checklist that you guys go through. And like always, refer back to this grid. It is your friend. It's there to help you. So, right, I think I've talked at you guys long enough. I will let you get on. Send in your work to Dojo and Twitter, and we'll speak to you soon. Have a good week, Year 5.